Young and the Restless Spoilers reveal Phyllis is never one to let anyone harm her children without retaliation. After Heather's tragic accident and Daniel's involvement in a shady plot, Phyllis believes that Sharon is behind all this trouble. To protect her family and especially to restore her son's honor, Phyllis decides to set the perfect trap for Sharon herself. This is a risky and dark plan, but for Phyllis, all moral values can be bent when her children are hurt. Phyllis begins by creating false evidence, leading Sharon into a maze of doubt and panic. At this time, Cameron Kirsten, the character who used to haunt Sharon in the past, reappears like a ghost, provoking her to find answers to protect herself. Cameron played on Sharon's fears, making her believe that Phyllis was secretly gathering evidence to put her in jail. Sharon, therefore, sneaked into Phyllis' room with the intention of finding evidence and erasing all traces. Unfortunately, Phyllis had anticipated Sharon's move. She had prepared everything, ready to arrest Sharon when she appeared in her room. Sharon had just entered, rummaging carefully and fearfully, when Phyllis suddenly appeared from the darkness, putting Sharon in a dead end. A tense confrontation between two scheming women. "Wow, Sharon, I didn't expect you to be this sneaky," Phyllis said in a sarcastic but dangerous tone. "What are you doing here? Or are you trying to erase the evidence you've been trying to hide?" Sharon immediately felt her heart pounding. She knew she had fallen into Phyllis' trap, but her pride wouldn't let her give up so easily. Sharon countered with a determined look, trying to hide her fear. "You have nothing to accuse me of, Phyllis. You are just desperate because you cannot find a reason to blame others." But Phyllis, with her tough and decisive nature, did not yield. She approached Sharon, her eyes flashing with fire as if she wanted to burn her opponent. The exchange of words could not be resolved, and the two fell into a tense and fierce duel. Phyllis, with her accumulated anger and resentment, successfully pushed Sharon to the floor, causing her to lose control. When Sharon woke up, she was shocked to find herself tied to the bed, unable to move. Phyllis stood there, looking at her with cold and angry eyes. "Do you think you can harm my family and get away, Sharon?" Phyllis whispered softly but full of threats. "I've had enough. You won't be released until you confess the whole dirty story." Sharon struggled, but all her efforts were in vain. In Phyllis's eyes, Sharon saw the madness, felt the confusion and resentment that pushed Phyllis to the edge of losing control. Sharon's situation became dangerous. She felt like a cornered animal with no way out. Nick's sudden appearance and the story's turning point. Meanwhile, Summer, Phyllis's daughter, received a terrifying call from an anonymous source. The content of the call was full of concerns about her mother's safety. With an uneasy feeling, Summer quickly called Nick Newman, who was the husband of both Phyllis and Sharon, and shared with him her suspicions. Nick, despite having gone through many confrontations with Phyllis and Sharon, still couldn't sit still when he heard about the dangers that were looming over his loved ones. He rushed to Phyllis's room, hoping to extinguish the tension before it flared into tragedy. When Nick pushed the door open, he could hardly believe his eyes. Before him was the sight of Sharon tied to the bed and Phyllis standing there, her face as cold as the villain in his worst dreams. Anger surged through Nick. He couldn't believe that Phyllis had gone this far. "Phyllis, what are you doing?" Nick growled, his eyes filled with anger and frustration. "You've lost control. This isn't a solution, it's a crime." Phyllis, still unfazed, looked straight at Nick. "You don't understand, Nick. Sharon is the one who caused it all. She's the cause of all this trouble, and she deserves to be held accountable." But Nick couldn't listen to any more reasoning. In his eyes, Sharon now looked like a victim who had been threatened and intimidated, and this made him decide to stand by her. He went to untie Sharon, despite Phyllis's fierce protests. After escaping, Sharon decided not to let things go easily. With her injuries and fear still haunting her, she declared that she would prosecute Phyllis for unlawful detention and mental intimidation. Sharon vowed to make Phyllis pay dearly for her arrogance and blind hatred. The final scene ends with Phyllis, looking cold and determined, standing alone in her room. Despite being turned away by everyone and possibly facing legal action, she remained steadfast in her belief that she did the right thing. In Phyllis' heart, it was all worth it if she could protect her children from what she saw as evil in disguise. Subscribe to Yonder for the latest updates on our channel.